Hi, welcome to the Sri Lankan Understanding Season 2. Today is a continuation of the conversation that we began with Mr. Amrit Rajaratnam, Managing Director of Portland and Knox Heritage Hotels and Fort Resorts. We discussed the past of the history of Sri Lankan tourism. We discussed the impact that the war and COVID and political turmoil had on the industry. We discuss the effect of social media in tourism and the caliber of tourism come to Sri Lanka and whether the numbers actually reflect the true value of what we can gain from tourism in this country. So today we will continue to discuss the diversification of the tourism industry in Sri Lanka, and we did discuss food and beverage on the last occasion. And today we would like to start off with wildlife tourism, a topic that is very close to my heart and I know is very close to your heart. We have a wonderful product. We have an amazing wildlife product that people in South Africa, Kenya, Tanzania, Zambia pay thousands of dollars per night to see. A leopard. We have the highest density of leopards in the world. Why are we struggling to sell this as a wildlife destination?
Well, I think if you look at it historically, I think we had a fantastic wildlife product, and that wildlife product has unfortunately been spoiled. And purely and simply, there has been little to no regulation or regulatory measures brought in for wildlife tourism in Sri Lanka. I think a lot of people across the board have, voiced their opinions on this, and there are, I think, countless studies being published, but purely and simply, there's just no regulation of wildlife tourism in Sri Lanka, and that may be an oversimplified take on the matter, but it boils down to that.
So now you and I both visited Africa many times. You've been like a constant visitor to Africa. One of the redeeming factors is when you see a sighting in Africa, you're afforded an uninterrupted view. Now, for instance, in South Africa, in some places, if you find the sighting, you are allowed to stay, and other people have to move off. They regulate the amount of vehicles at a sighting. Yeah. We have seen, and I think we can see the pictures in Yala where there's 150 jeeps looking at one leopard. The leopard is on the road, leopard can't cross the road. There are resorts or camps in Africa which charge about $3,000 a night per person per night. But they do not want to stay in a queue to see an animal. How can we fix this?
Well, I think it's a very complex question that you've asked, but in my opinion, and I have an opinion on this, yes, over-visitation, let's say specifically, say Yala National Park Block 1, is a massive issue. And as a wildlife tourist yourself, you know that specifically for wildlife tourists, they put a premium on the quality of the wildlife sighting and the wilderness experience over even hotel amenities.
Yes.
A wildlife tourist will pay, as you said, sometimes thousands of dollars for the ability or the chance of having an excellent wildlife experience. They are not necessarily paying for a luxury camp or a luxury hotel, but they're paying for a very rare opportunity, and in this sort of modern world, the chance to experience wilderness and wildlife, a unique experience. That's what they put a premium on. So if that is what people want, what Yala National Park in Block 1 does not afford them right now is that. Purely because there's over-visitation of Yala National Park. Now, it's a complex question because why is there over-visitation of Yala National Park? Now, you can say that we have allowed too many vehicles into the park on a certain day, but then why are there too many vehicles? It's because economically, to run a safari vehicle, is that is sort of the job that a lot of people in the area want to get into, because it then gives them access to tourism dollars. It gives them, so in a sense you can't blame the jeep driver for the problem of overvisitation to Yala National Park. One, we haven't economically possibly given people an alternative source of income rather than utilizing the national park.
So to that end,
Yeah.
Yala also has other blocks.
Yala also has other blocks, but I think it's a more basic economic question of how can we, the only way of solving, in my opinion, of solving some of these problems is to look at the needs of the communities that live in and around the national park. And again,
So you're taking your examples from what Kenya and South Africa have done.
in a sense, like in
Yes.
Kenya, as you know, in the Masai Mara, I think a lot of there's a national reserve, but the lands surrounding the Masai Mara are generally owned
Yeah.
by the Masai, and they have given the land to in some instances private reserves that pay them revenue based off the camp or lodge's revenue.
Yeah.
So they are earning to conserve wildlife on their land. It's it's more detailed than that, but then that's essentially the model.
I think wildlife tourism, we can talk for hours and hours on the issue of wildlife tourism. I also want to just come into the fact, now you have Warden's House, which you have recently launched.
Yes.
It is a wildlife destination. It's in the, but you don't utilize Block 1. You utilize Dudugambehera.
Yes, Block 5.
Block
yeah.
5. Any particular reason as to why you want to utilize? Because I want to understand as a hotel owner, because Block 5 you're not guaranteed of a leopard sighting. But any reason as to why you would persist in that, considering that Warden's House is a premium destination?
Yeah, so Warden's House, yes, it's first and foremost a wildlife lodge, but we only have 4 rooms or 4 suites at Warden's House. So we wanted to still highlight that Yala was more than Block 1, but also we didn't want to impact the area negatively. And with 4 rooms, I think we pose a very minimal impact to Block 5. Other than that, we also wanted to highlight that Yala was more than leopards and leopards alone. So we take a very balanced view of our safaris, that we highlight all the wonderful wildlife that's available in Yala. We have tremendous leopard sightings as well, but when a guest arrives at Warden's House, we try and also highlight the history of the area, which is very interesting with Katharagama and the whole legend of Katharagama, and as it relates to Yala. There's so much more there that a guest can enjoy.
There's so much tradition.
Yes, tradition.
Steeped in tradition.
Culture, tradition, religion to a certain way, but it's a wonderful story and a wonderful area. And actually, if you think back to even our childhood, actually part of the mystique of Yala is also the story of Katharagama.
Yes.
Which is actually not really marketed well to tourists. It should be that the shrine, even at Katharagama, is much better visited and forms maybe part of an experience of that region, rather than the focus purely and simply on Yala Block 1, which would also then alleviate some of the pressure on the block.
But that is also, I want to come to cultural tourism, but first we have to take a small break, and when we come back we will discuss the impact of cultural tourism, local tourism, and the issues we face in Sri Lanka with local tourism. Welcome back. We were just discussing we were just segueing rather into cultural tourism, and Amrit was making a very valid point about impact of cultural tourism, the stories, the history. Now we have a cultural triangle. You are very happy saying we have a cultural triangle, go to the temple here, go to the Nambula temple here, go there. But no, in Egypt, I haven't had the fortune of going there, but I'm made to understand they have a depiction of what the ancient pharaohs went through in the Egypt. They have a show. Now, for instance, Sigiriya, it's placed perfectly for that kind of tourism where you can show the people the rich heritage of Sri Lanka. Why haven't these or have you all been shut down, or Sigiriya village has been there for 30 odd years? Why isn't the government taking an initiative to do this kind of cultural tourism?
I think what you are referring to is like the light and sound show
And
with the
so
with
now
the pyramids.
with the technology,
Yeah.
you can do 3D mapping, you can do projections, you can do
Yes.
so many things to show what life was like
I think there's just been launched actually
at Cinnamon Grand.
yes, a virtual
a virtual reality
walkthrough of Sigiriya, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
And is very well done. So that I think is just happening now. But
But we are still behind, far behind everybody else.
yes, but we are, but it's a very positive step in the right direction, and I applaud. Actually, don't know exactly who was behind it, but it's a fantastic
It's at
initiative.
Cinnamon Grand, I think.
Yes, I
Yeah,
think
yeah.
it was at Cinnamon Grand, but I
Yeah.
think it might be at one of the other cinemas.
Okay.
So yes, you're right. There is a lot more in terms of if you're talking about development of, say, Sigiriya as a destination to make it more attractive to the tourists. Yes, in the sense that it is already very attractive and it's a fantastic tourism destination. But do we have enough facilities for tourists? Now, I think there are plans underway to develop the Sigiriya Rock and the area with more tourist facilities. But if I could slightly shift away from sort of infrastructure, tourism infrastructure, one of the things that we also face issues with is the number of guides that are available, especially on, let's say, so we have certain language deficiencies, let's say for Spanish guides or for any other destination, and this is something where maybe even the government can step in and help create jobs as well by running programs and running trainings that actually help with this deficiency, and also provide employment for a lot more people. So in that sense, it's not only putting money for tourism infrastructure, but it's also job creations. That it's a low-hanging fruit.
Yeah.
Where the government can actually establish schools, establish other institutions. There are already, but there needs to be much more done in order to encourage people into the tourism sector as a source of employment.
So this also leads me, because now a lot of these things is, now we visited Sigiriya when we were children because local tourism was encouraged. Now we've had this issue when there's an economic crisis, when COVID strikes, when everything happens, all these resorts want the local tourists to come. The moment the tourism numbers pick up, the local tourists are cast aside, right? And that has become a very prevalent issue. Now, I heard recently that one of the hotels offers a tourist rate and a local rate, but they only offer the local rate within 10 days of the booking. So you can't plan. So have you experienced this? What is your experience with local tourists? Because I can understand in one sense that some tourists may not like to have a lot of locals around, but local tourism also remains a very important part of tourism.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think in our attitude has always been, it's one of our key segments. Local tourists are one of our key segments, and something that we actively market, and we try to get more local tourists if possible, because it's a year-round market and it's a very strong market for us. It's one of our most important segments. Yeah. Now, when it comes to pricing policies, obviously it varies from hotel to hotel and group to group.
Which is fine. I mean, you have to make your money,
sure.
But yeah.
I think what you're referring to here also is in the recent spate of it's mostly prevalent in the South Coast, of locals being discriminated against merely due to the fact that they are Sri Lankan. Yeah. Now again, I mean, there is no place for that in our country, and I think it's something that the authorities also should deal with very strongly.
Yeah.
But as I said, for several other reasons as well, it comes down to regulation and enforcement, because I think there are basic laws in this country that already protect citizens against discrimination based on several factors. And you're the lawyer, so you know better.
So the issue here is like now you're talking about being discriminated based on this thing, and that in Sri Lanka is most likely a fundamental rights application, right?
Yes.
So that is against an executive or administrative action where these are private entities. You can take action against private entities, but of course that's a bit more complicated doing that. So I think people now just resort to social media and public shaming to get their point across.
Yeah, which is effective in a way, but it becomes very abrasive. I think if you had a proper legal framework, and it's up to the legislature then to put this through, if you had a proper legal framework, then maybe enforcement would be easier, which is an area in which we're lacking in a lot of things. You spoke about Yala National Park. If there was a will to actually put in a mechanism to not limit but to regulate numbers within Yala National Park, then we wouldn't be having this conversation.
So Amrit, just hold on to that. When we come back, we are going to discuss the problems facing Sri Lankan tourism and how the government or other institutions, it doesn't have to be government, other institutions can help provide a clear pathway to increase tourism and increase our GDP revenue from tourism. I will come back. We are now going to discuss, which is a very important fact and something I believe that we've lacked for a long time. Regulations and enforcement, as you've been saying. It's not the lack of laws. It's the enforcement of the laws that are already in existence that is causing an issue. Right now we were just discussing locals being denied access to destinations. There's another issue that came up a few months ago where foreign nationals were illegally running businesses down south, and that money was being repatriated outside the country. Now, a lot of people were very upset about it, saying that people from outside have come and they're running businesses. But this happens in every country.
I mean, yes, I think, there was, and it's been in the news recently, obviously, of foreigners running illegal businesses in Sri Lanka. Now, let's immediately, I suppose one solution would be to regularize the process in which you can run a business in Sri Lanka. I would say you should let foreigners run businesses in Sri Lanka, but under the proper legal framework so that it's a level playing field. I believe what a lot of people were unhappy about is Sri Lankan businesses having to abide by the law and the rules of the country, whereas foreign run businesses were not paying taxes, were not remitting money, let's say, through the correct channels, so that the country was actually losing foreign income because this was being done with systems that were completely outside Sri Lanka, from taking payments to remitting money to whatever else. So I think, yes, I think it is the country should look at making it easier for people to do business within Sri Lanka. I don't think only the tourism sector, I think a lot of different sectors would welcome that. And I think, again, low-hanging fruit. This, if you want to invest in a business in Sri Lanka, give business visas or some form of visa that allows you to invest a certain amount in the country. And then I think there was a law, I think historically, where if you did invest into Sri Lanka through certain accounts, that you were allowed to take out of Sri Lanka profit or whatever, like to the amount of
your
money
capital
invested.
gains.
Absolutely, which I think would only benefit Sri Lanka to a large extent.
It's funny, we are caught in this kind of protectionism of local industry, but also we want foreign revenue, which is kind of hindering the local businesses. But
and also look, I don't think we should vilify all foreign businesses. Sometimes there are skills that foreign entities have that can be passed into the local community as well. There's a lot of things that we can learn, and we shouldn't be afraid of foreign business at all. But we should definitely have the frameworks in place so that it's a level playing field for both locally owned and foreign owned businesses. But let's not shun them, let's welcome them, I feel. Competition is actually, at the end of the day, more competition, the benefit of that is only to the consumer. So as Sri Lankans, we should welcome whoever comes into the tourism sphere.
But is anything happening now? Now down south you've had the issues. Now there was a recent gazette, I believe, that was passed saying that no, you cannot discriminate against locals. So there is change happening and positive change, but is it happening fast enough? Because tourism is such a dynamic industry.
It is a dynamic industry. I think overall, we've to sound like a broken record. Enforcement is key here, and the government. I welcome the government to look into how it enforces all these new regulations that they are proposed and they'd like to bring in. It's, again, as I said, tourism can solve a lot of issues for Sri Lanka. Not tourism alone.
It's an easy win.
It's an easy win in the sense of we are so strong in tourism. Our product is actually world class. I have no fear as someone engaged in the tourism industry. I'm not, how can we say, intimidated by any other tourism product in the region. I think we can compete, and we can compete very well. What we do lack is sort of a clear vision sometimes on what we want from our tourism product. If we can do that properly, I think people are comparing Sri Lanka to Bali. I don't think we should compare Sri Lanka to Bali, because I think we're better.
Yeah.
So as I said before, a clear vision and clear leadership is
right.
needed.
Maldives has amazing beaches. Bali has amazing beaches. Thailand has a very different product.
Yeah.
Malaysia again is very island based, island. The only comparable one I would say is India, because they have the diversity of it. But you're right, we have an amazing product. But India has 5% of their GDP. Maldives is well over that. Thailand made over $6 billion. Malaysia has made some $18.9 billion. We can achieve these targets.
I think we can. Also, people forget that, look, we're only 2 years removed from coming out of 5 years of almost zero tourism. So give it a bit of time. There will be issues that crop up. I think we have to look at many aspects. There are many problems to solve. I'm always someone who believes that it needs time, especially in a country like Sri Lanka, where we probably haven't had the run of the mill. We've had our share of bad luck. But we have a tremendous product, and I think the future is very bright.
Amrit, thank you so much for your time. That's all the time we have today. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Sri Lankan Understanding. I think it was a very, very important issue. So we hope you join us again next time, and keep tuning in. Thank you so much.